Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Whether you're listening during your commute, while working out, or just relaxing at home, we appreciate you. Every download, every listen, and every subscription means a lot. Up next, the 12 Kyle podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on Spotify and YouTube. Man, check this out. Earlier today, I was riding in the car, had the playlist on shuffle, and a song came on that I hadn't heard in a while. But as soon as I heard it, when the beat came on, I immediately recognized the beat. It was the beat from the song If My Homie Calls from Tupac Shakur. Now, it's a very popular song. It is a song that I was first introduced to, I want to say back in 1991, which was the year that I graduated from high school. Crazy to think, right? It was on Tupac's first album, Tupacalypse Now. And I bought the tape, and I loved the tape. It was when I became a fan of Tupac. But more specifically, the title and the subsequent song and the lyrics that he spit in that particular record brought me to what I want to talk about on this episode, which is If My Homies Call. And what I mean by that is, in the song, Pac talks about being there for his closest of friends if they call. And I think that, well, let me rephrase that. I know for a fact that I do that as well. And it goes back to, that time, more specifically when, like, the guys that I grew up with and the girls that I grew up with that I was really, really tight with, when we went off on different paths after high school. Some of us went to college. I went to South Carolina State University, and a couple of us went to the military. And so it was different then because in 1991, 92, there was no internet, right? And so how you kept in touch with people, you had to go above and beyond. It may be writing letters. There was no such thing as emails, right? But the thing that always, stuck with me was how I would move when the phone would ring, or if I had to make a phone call to one of the homies. And that's what I want to talk about on this episode. Like, just being there for your closest friends. I remember, and I think I've told them this, but like back in the day when I got those phone calls, more specifically when I was at South Carolina State University, those phone calls meant a lot. They didn't come that often, but they always came on time. And what I mean by that is, like, there were times as a freshman in particular where I was struggling with trying to fit in, trying to kind of find my footing on the campus of South Carolina State, and it never failed. The days where I wasn't really sure about what was going to happen or how I was going to, get through the obstacles that was in front of me, I got a phone call. It was one of the homies, or, even my male and female homies. And I think those are the things that, and I don't know why these things happen the way that they do or they did, but for whatever reason, maybe it was, how we were in sync with each other, I would always get those calls when I really needed them the most. And subsequently, I would make those phone calls, I think, when they needed me the most. And I didn't know that at the time. And I think it's a connection and a brotherhood and a sisterhood that you have with people to where you just know, like, hey, let me reach out to such and such, or let me call Whoop-de-Whoop to make sure they're good. But But those phone calls always came on time when I was at South Carolina State. And subsequently, as I got older, still the same thing, resonated. The one thing about, when your homie calls is making sure that you have time to talk no matter what. Now, here's the thing. Back at, 1991, if I got a phone call, that phone call cost money, right? There was a thing called long distance. And so if you weren't from that era, you don't understand, but like it costs to make a phone call. So even if you only talk 10 minutes could be $10, so those phone calls were very important, but they weren't long phone calls. They were calls that you just needed to make, or what have you. But I always made sure that I had time to talk to my homies when they called, because my thing was they called for a reason, right? And vice versa. If I call them, I'm calling for a reason as well. So I want to talk to you. And so subsequently, I seem to always have time. There was nobody that called me that I considered to be a homie that I didn't have time to talk to. Like, you always made time for your friends. It just didn't matter. And as I got older in life, as I settled down, I realized that, no matter having a girlfriend and then subsequently becoming a father and then subsequently becoming a husband, I still had time when my homies call to chop it up with the homies. And I think that's very important, because you just don't know what someone's going through. And it's always amazing to see certain things and how they play out. But I think the universe and the connection that you have with your homies, that makes it that much better when you guys can communicate. Because here's the thing, I'll be honest, there may be some homies that I have that I don't talk to on a day-to-day basis, and I literally and figuratively can go months without talking to them. And when I do talk to them on the phone, we pick up right where we left off. And that's cool, because that's how it's supposed to be. Now, there are some people, I think, once you get to a certain point, you realize that maybe you're not the homies that you used to be. And if that's the case, then you probably have less time for them, and you probably have even less time to talk or catch up, if you will. With homies, you really don't have to catch up. Like, you just really pick up where you left off. One of the things that I talked about in previous episodes, and it's worth repeating, that me and some of my closest homies that I grew up with, and I referenced them on an old episode of the 12 Kyle podcast called, what's it called? I ain't got no gun, but I got my crew, which is a line from Goody Mob. Ain't got no gun, but I got my crew. But the thing that we realized as friends was, we've gotten older, obviously. And during COVID, we weren't outside like that. So we started having this this group chat where, well, we had a group chat already, but we had this thing where we would get on a Zoom call, and that way you could see everybody face to face, or at least you could see their faces. And we would get on a Zoom call, and man, these Zoom calls would last like 3 or 4 hours. And the first 2 or 3 hours might be jokes. But one of the things that we learned about ourselves was, and one of the homies that mentioned this, was that we as men have a tendency to say, when you ask how we're doing, I'm okay, or it's okay. And that's kind of like a default mechanism. Really and truly, you may or may not be okay. And that's okay. And I think what's important is that you convey how you're feeling or what you're going through to your homies. Because if you can't talk to your homies, I don't know who you can talk to. At least that's the way I see it. And I was recently having a conversation with the homies, and one of the homies was telling me about some things he was going through as far as health-wise and stuff like that. And it was refreshing to hear, but I did not know, because we're texting each day and sending memes and stuff, and sometimes your really true feelings or what you're going through can get hidden behind laughs and memes and stuff like that. And some that are closest to you may or may not know exactly what you're going through. And I think that when that happens, you got to kind of sift through all of that to get to the crux of what's going on with your friends. But I think that's a default. If somebody say, "Hey, 12 Kyle, how you doing today?" I'm okay. I'm doing good. Everything good. Oh yeah, everything's good. That type of thing. And everything may or may not be good. We all have problems. We all have situations. We all have scenarios. We all have a boatload of things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And some, things are a little bit more heavier than others. And how we can't, it's really about how you carry the weight that's on you. Some people can handle, carrying that weight. Others can't handle it as well. For me, I'm always concerned about money and where my money goes, how I spend my money, obviously my kids. And so I can't say that it's a worry, but I'm always trying to stay 5 steps ahead when it comes to money. I'm just wired like that. So, when things like that happen, you have to take account as to what's important and what's not. Are you feeling nostalgic for the golden eras of rap and soul music? If so, tune in to the Rap Soul Podcast. We are your weekly journey through the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, spotlighting the music and the hidden gems that shaped the soundtrack of our lives. From the powerful beats to the soulful melodies, we bring you the best of the past with fresh insights and stories. Rediscover the music that defined a generation. Subscribe to the Rap Soul Podcast and enjoy the vibes. If you want a podcast where culture, conversation, and life collide, where you get insightful commentary, engaging discussions, and a fresh perspective on everything, then you need to listen to the 12 Kyle podcast. Hosted by the one and only, yours truly, 12 Kyle, a voice that you know and trust. This podcast will bring you thought-provoking moments, compelling stories, and a whole lot of fun. Whether you're a first-time listener or just tuning in, each episode promises to be something new and exciting. So sit back, relax, join 12 Kyle, myself, and my guests as we break down the world around us and give you stories that you've never heard before, from nostalgic throwbacks to everything in between. The 12 Kyle podcast is a front row seat to this conversation. Subscribe now and never miss an episode of the 12 Kyle podcast, where the vibe is always real and the discussion is always worth your time. I remember I was on the phone one day with the homie, my boy Jay Fresh. You guys have heard me talk about Jay Fresh. Jay Fresh and I have known each other since we were 6 years old. I distinctly remember Jay Fresh had moved to California, LA to be more specific, and he was struggling at the time. He was going through a storm, right? And he called me, and I'll never forget it. I was on Ponce, downtown in Atlanta, Ponce de Leon Avenue, and I was leaving downtown, headed back to the east side. And I distinctly remember I was driving past. I just drove past the Krispy Kreme, and you get a little bit further up, there's a Zaxby's restaurant, and Jay Fresh was telling me these things, and I'm really just sitting there just listening. I'm not really just saying anything. I'm just listening. I'm like, okay, and I was letting him get everything off his chest, and I stopped at a light, and I distinctly remember as he's telling me the story about what was going on with him, I saw a guy on the corner. And this guy leans into a garbage can that's on the street. He ducks down and almost submerges his entire body into the garbage can. He pulls out a hamburger out of the garbage can. No wrapper, no nothing, just a hamburger that was halfway eaten. And he bit into the hamburger. And as Jay Fresh is telling me the story, I'm like, wow, I just saw a guy dig in a trash can and eat a hamburger, like it was nothing, but that was his food. And I didn't want Jay Fresh to ever be in that type of position. Not that he was, but you want great things for your homies. And I told him what I saw, and then I broke down. I think that there was a reason why he was explaining to me what was happening in his life. And there was a reason why I saw what I saw at the time that we were talking, because I feel like something was supposed to happen and I was supposed to deliver a word to him as a homie. And I think I think that happens from time to time. Like I said, when you're connected with your friends, um, you know, I think one of the biggest things for me when my homies call is I get a pleasure out of being there for the homies. I really do. I think if you're a friend, you want to be known as someone who's dependable. Like I'm the type, if I tell you I'm going to call you back, I'll call you back. Now, unlike my boy Mo, Mo will say, "Hey, I'll call you back," and he'll call back like 4 days later. You forget what you called him for. Um, but if I say I'm gonna call you back, I'm pretty good at calling people back pretty promptly as well. But I do get a pleasure out of being there for my friends, and subsequently, I think my friends do the same for me. The homies really enjoy, like if I call them and I'm like, "Hey man, I need to talk to you about this. I need your advice or I need your assistance or something like that." Uh, 9 times out of nine, they're gonna drop what they're doing and lend me a word or lend me an ear. Sometimes with your homies, it ain't even really about what it is that you can do for them. What it is you're being there for them as they speak so that they have a sounding board. And more importantly than anything else, I think as men, more specifically, I think it's important that we have those sounding boards. There's certain things that you could talk with your homies that you can't talk with your girl about. I mean, that's just how it is. And vice versa. Like I have some homies that are women, and I was gonna say females, but I don't use the word females. I have you know, I have friends who are women who are homies, and they've really just been there for me too as well. And they've always been able to, be there and then give me the words that I need to hear. Not necessarily what I want to hear, but what I need to hear. And vice versa. I think sometimes when you're there to offer that type of perspective, you can help them out, especially when it comes to them dealing with the men in their life and so forth and so on. The thing that, when your homies call, you realize is that their problems become your problems. And it's okay, because more often than not, your homie isn't somebody that's just going to dump a bunch of problems on you. They understand and respect where you are, but if they're coming to you, they're coming to you for a reason. They're not coming to you to, again, unload everything. Um, they genuinely want to solve whatever crises or just hear your voice sometimes. Sometimes it ain't even about having a problem or anything like that. It's just really about just hearing your voice. If you have FaceTime, sometimes it's just about seeing us. And then sometimes it's about seeing them in person just so you can dap them up and hug them and love on them. I mean, I think that's very important. I don't know that we as men, more specifically, I don't think that we understand how that truly works. Because here's the thing. If you were a young man, if you were a little boy at one time, we all were little boys at one time, the need and desire to have a hug and someone love on you, that doesn't go away. It doesn't go away when you're 5. It doesn't go away when you're 25. It doesn't go away when you're 55. We all still need that love and affection, more specifically from the people that we love and trust. And homies are definitely those people who we love and trust. But like I said, your problems become their problems and vice versa. Now you're always very leery of people who, when they call you, all they got is problems. Now, listen, I got my own problems. So I don't need you dumping your problems on me every single time we talk. If it's like that, then it becomes a situation where I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. But outside of that, and for the record, I don't have any homies like that, because I think for me, I would have weeded you out by then, because that's not what I'm about. Now, I am about helping someone, but I'm not here to take on your issues or what have you. But yeah, like I said, it all came to me in this verse, or this song, I should say, from Tupac, If My Homies Call, If My Homie Calls. One thing that stood out particular, and I'll read you this part of the song, and it says, quote, "But now I don't want to down my homie, no matter how low you go, you're not lonely. And I hear that you made a few enemies, but when you need a friend, you can depend on me. Call. If you need my assistance, there'll be no resistance. I'll be there in an instant. Who am I to judge another brother? Only is his cover. I be there. I be no different than the other. H to the O to the M to the I-N-I-E. I'm down to the E-N-D. Because it's a fall, no time at all. I'm down for y'all when my homies call. Sorry, I kind of bundled that. But it's I've said before on the Rap Soul podcast, it's hard to read lyrics because you really want to rap the lyrics. I really wanted to just, go off and spit the whole verse. But yeah, I mean, when he talks about no matter how low you are, you're not lonely. Not lowly, excuse me. And I think that's very important because, we're going to have highs and lows. The key thing is not to be too high on the highs and don't get too low on the lows. But just giving your homie the reassurance that you're going to be there and that you are there. Because see, here's the thing. A lot of people will tell you, hey, I'm here if you need me. And when you need them, they're nowhere to be found. That's not a homie. That's just somebody that's an associate that's in your circle. And you probably need to get them out of your circle. But for your real homies, if they need you, you'll be there. And if you need them, they'll be there for you. That's how it works. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's the definition of a homie. So like I said, I mean, this song really inspired this podcast episode. And, shout out to Pac, man, because I know, he was going through a lot when he made this album. He was venturing off from Digital Underground and striking out on his own. And this is way before Death Row. This is before anybody knew who Tupac Amaru Shakur was. But the song still resonates and it still means a lot because at the end of the day, I'm here for my homies. And more importantly, they're here for me. And you got to love that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday and every Sunday. If you're on YouTube, check us out. We got a YouTube channel there. Like and subscribe and share it with a friend. Also, don't forget about our baby. It is called the Rap Soul Podcast. It's strictly for music lovers such as yourself. It's the place where we have conversations about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. Simply put, folks, it's the best music podcast that you've never heard. So you should definitely check it out. Also, if you'd like to support this channel, you can hit us up on Cash App, $TWELVEKYLE. Also, we have merch. Check out the 12 Kyle Podcast merch. Click the link. You can buy 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Once again, I am your boy 12 Kyle. This has been another edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I'm getting tongue-tied here. My bad. This has been another edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.
Corporate megastores are spending millions lobbying D.C. politicians on one-sided policies that send small businesses tumbling. They want to enact harmful credit card mandates that take resources away from your local credit union and community bank, leaving Main Street businesses with less access to credit, making it harder for your family to pay for everyday goods like gas and groceries. Tell Congress to guard your card and oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card mandates.
Paid for by Electronic Payments Coalition.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the 12 Kyle Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and share this podcast with a friend who needs the 12 Kyle Podcast in their life. Every listen, every download, and every share helps us grow. Thanks for being a part of the 12 Kyle Podcast community. We appreciate your support. We will catch you next time. 5,000.